The Indianapolis Colts believe they finally have the answer at the quarterback position with Anthony Richardson. But after missing most of his rookie year, what should expectations be for Richardson this season? And where does the Colts quarterback room stack up amongst the rest of the AFC South? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore. And as always, I'm joined here by my fellow analyst and co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, Drake Wally. Drake, first of all, happy Father's Day to you. First Father's Day as a brand new dad, so shout out to you, brother. But we're getting into our positional breakdowns, our positional previews for the Colts. It's what we do usually every summer to fill this dead time. We really do our deep dive into the roster before the season starts. And where else should we start but the quarterback position? And like I mentioned, the Colts really believe in Anthony Richardson. Now, he still has to go prove that on the field, and that's what 2024 is really going to all be about.
Yeah, and it was up to week 5, exactly that. So everything is about this guy. Everything, the offense, the entire scheme, every way that the game plan can evolve, whether you're behind, neck and neck or running away with the game, it's still all going to be around Anthony Richardson's ability, that arm, that athleticism, and everything changes when it's not, and we saw that last season. So I am really excited for Anthony Richardson this season. You're getting a revamped and new life type of offensive line. You're getting Jonathan Taylor back. A.D. Mitchell gets to start his career. Maybe Alec Pierce can find his footing. And Shane Steichen, of course, gets to do this again after having a year under his belt and getting a winning record with a team that probably shouldn't have had a winning record. So I'm excited to talk about Anthony Richardson because, if for no other reason, he can be one of the most dynamic players in the NFL if everything hits.
The Colts have certainly done a really good job putting young playmakers around Anthony Richardson for his sophomore campaign. Now it's just about, how can he go out there and produce? So tonight we're going to look at the quarterback position and not just Anthony Richardson. Yes, we're going to talk a lot about what we expect of him this year, what we think the goals for Anthony Richardson should be, but also the other quarterbacks on the roster. We want to talk about Joe Flacco and is he going to be a comparable backup to Gardner Minshew? And then what about the quarterback 3 battle? That's something that we're going to be watching all throughout training camp and the preseason between Sam Ehlinger, Keaton Slovis, and Jason Bean. But let's look at the chat here. Truett getting us started out with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much, buddy, for all of your support. Really, really do appreciate it. He says that he expects Anthony Richardson to play 15 games because the Colts clinched the division early. We'll have to see about that. And then he rests and then gets the comeback player of the year award. So Truett, thank you so much as always for all of your support. Sean Contwright is here, one of our nightly listeners. Thank you so much. We got a special guest, Joe Camacho, or Camacho Joe as he's known on X. Hello to you, good sir. DSG Goodbar, great to see you. Sarah as well, excited for the season already, just like we are. And yes, we are going to talk about Trevor Lawrence tonight, as Trevor Lawrence with the Jaguars just signed a 5-year, $275 million extension. We're going to be talking about the rest of the AFC South, and shout out to Matthew Sandberg. I apologize on the last name, but he gave us this idea of comparing each positional group to the rest of the AFC South. So we're going to talk about that tonight as well. So as we get started tonight, please, if you haven't done so, go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, so you never miss an episode. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. And guys, I want to give you a little teaser. Don't leave after the Colts' latest news and rumors tonight, because we have a special appearance by a couple of people that we think you'll probably want to meet. So definitely stay till the very end of the episode tonight. But Drake, let's dive right into it, buddy. Our first positional preview is with the quarterback position, and again, a lot different feeling than even 2 years ago when you're not sure what the future is going to hold at the quarterback position. Even last year, Drake, we had high hopes for Anthony Richardson, but until you actually see him on the field, there's still that question mark of can he really play and excel at this next level. And in that small sample size that we saw last year, to start out the season before he got hurt, Anthony Richardson was starting to find his groove in the NFL. And you think about that and what's to come in 2024, and you're hoping that he can kind of pick up where he left off, where he doesn't really have to adjust too much to the NFL game. He already has his taste of that, and he could really hit the ground running.
Yeah, and last season, I know that we've said this a bunch, but his pocket presence was what really stood out to me because obviously he can chuck the freaking ball down the field. Obviously, the guy can get away if he wants to. And if you watched the tape like we did, and like many people did, you would see that this guy was waiting for people to get downfield on passing plays, then going. Okay. Or he would only run on a QB designed run. So he has the IQ too. But it was that pocket presence. And I know that you go back to this highlight so much, but it is just so insane in not even just the play where he gets hit by Aaron Donald and hits Alec Pierce on that frozen rope. It's just multiple times throughout that game. He's navigating that pocket with nuance, with just raw ability to get away from pressure. He's very sensitive. The hips weren't rigid. He continued to move and kept the ball close to the chest, ready to uncork that thing. And I'm telling you, if he can just continue to smooth out those things, Steichen and Turner and JBC, if they can keep working with him, man, it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of passer he can become, because we saw raw ability of him to be able to just get that ball down the field and hit, a donut sized hole. So I love it. I thought that he did really well. Now, of course, there's still areas you got to improve. Like he would miss, there's certain throws he just missed that were wide open. You're like, damn, there's that inaccuracy that he came out of college with. So there's a lot of room to improve. But Andrew, yeah, I definitely have to say I was pretty surprised at how far along past what we thought he was, because we didn't really expect that. We thought he was going to struggle, especially in like his first, 2, 3, 4 games. I know that's all he played, but he just seemed to get better and learn from his mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we dive into like the expectations for Anthony Richardson for this season, I kind of want to talk about what goals should Anthony Richardson have for this upcoming season. And I think first and foremost, Drake, the first goal is to stay healthy. Stay healthy, play if not all the games, the majority and almost all of the games. Get those valuable reps. Not be out there for only half a season or consistently in and out of the lineup due to injuries. He has got to stay healthy. And Truitt said 15 games out of the 17. I think the goal should be play all 17 games. It's got, and whether he actually hits that mark or not, we'll have to see. And the NFL, like I always say, there's 100% injury rate in the NFL, so it's hard to predict injuries, but not putting yourself in unnecessary dangerous situations or slowing up as you're running into the end zone for a touchdown and end up getting hit and getting a concussion. Like just be able to control what you can control, and don't put yourself in those positions to get hurt. And if you do that, I think Anthony Richardson will be just fine. But if he does do these little things or is kind of more reckless with the football and with his body, that chance is going to go up. So first and foremost is play all the games. I think that should be a goal. And another goal I think that might seem like a dull moment on the surface, but just have a really good understanding of Shane Steichen's offense. Be able to, by the end of the season, have the entire playbook at your disposal. You're not just limited to certain parts of the playbook, but make it so every single play and every single option within Shane Steichen's playbook is available. And so that way the Colts can be dynamic and multiple on offense. And we're not just by the end of the season, starting to see the same things that we did in weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4, be able to expand on that. And I think there's a really good chance that Anthony Richardson will be able to do that, just knowing the type of person he is, how hard he works, how smart and intelligent he is. I don't think that that's going to be an issue. But I think just before we start looking at, stats, and obviously the goals for every player, and for Anthony Richardson, certainly, when you talk to him, he uses even how he was talking last year, first and foremost Super Bowl, and then like playoffs, division title, playoffs, and the personal goals, obviously, MVP, Pro Bowl, All Pro, those types of things. But realistic goals, when you're thinking what absolutely needs to happen for Anthony Richardson to have a successful season and for the Colts to have a successful season, I think those have to be 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really do anything if you're injury prone, and it's the competitor in the guy. It's the fact that he's been used to being bigger than pretty much anybody that's going to tackle him. Okay, I mean, he came into the league being as big as Micah Parsons. Okay, so like you have to understand that, and the athleticism. He probably thought he could beat anybody in a foot race, and then kind of putting the brakes on right at the goal line. That's just, again, not really expecting to get clocked. So I think that when you're looking at the way that you have to learn in this kind of atmosphere, it's just with Anthony Richardson, learn how to dial it back every now and again, but how to also keep it going and keep the foot down on the gas pedal. And I also like what you said about learning the offense. It's still a complex offense that has a lot of moving pieces, and it's all designed around Richardson, who can throw, who can run. It's not just a pocket passer here. That is a really expansive offensive playbook with little tweaks that make an entire RPO different. There's little nuanced audibles that happen. I mean, so much is going on. So as long as he can do, like you said, both those things, man, it's really just about matching the athletic ability with learning how to continue evolving as a professional quarterback, which in modern day sports is, if not the hardest position to play individually, it's definitely top 3.
And I like what NFL Nerd says here. Part of being a competitor is doing everything you can to win, including staying on the field. The best ability is availability, and Anthony Richardson has to show that this season. Now, when we go into the expectations for Anthony Richardson, Drake, I wanted to ask you this. I mean, obviously, the offense is going to look much more like it did early in the season for the Colts with Anthony Richardson in there. We're going to see much more of the quarterback run game. It's going to be exciting to see Jonathan Taylor next to Anthony Richardson. But what are your overall expectations for number 5? And I know you don't need to give me stat predictions or anything like that unless you want to, but what are your overall expectations for him going into this season, and what do you think he can accomplish?
I think that the expectations are, the guy combined with college and professional has started 17 total games. So I think that you still need to keep those expectations a little bit realistic. Okay. Also, though, there's only been 4 games on this guy that you can watch as far as tape. All right. So there's not really that much game tape on him yet. So I think that you have a real big opportunity for Anthony Richardson to bounce back in 2024 because there's just not that much on you. And also, whatever they do have, they don't have it with Jonathan Taylor. So it's like you really don't know what those two can do together. I can tell you this, a lot. They can do a lot of damage to your defense, just those guys. So I expect him to, he's going to throw some picks, probably 12, 13, maybe 14 interceptions, because I think they're going to want him to get out there and throw the football some. I also think you might see him attempt more passes than you would expect. It's not just going to be run, 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 run. I think you got to get him in a rhythm. You've got a rookie receiver that you want him to grow with and a sophomore receiver who is already growing with him and might eclipse 80, 90 catches, has that potential in Josh Downs. So I just think expect some mistakes here and there. Expect him to keep learning. Don't expect him to just be this incredible Lamar Jackson, finished product right now. Still only 21, I believe so. Or maybe he just turned 22.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he turned 22 in May.
That's just so freaking young, man. Just give him a little bit of grace. Okay, you gotta let this guy continue to grow. That's all I'm saying. But as far as realistic expectations, I expect him. You got to be out there at least 14, 15 games, man. You cannot go out there and get hurt again. You got to take care of yourself. And if you can avoid those injuries, you just have to figure out a way to do it. And no offense to AR, but almost all of them outside of really the worst one were the ones I think he could help.
Yeah, I agree there For sure. And I think when I'm looking at expectations, I don't expect Anthony Richardson to be perfect by any means. I get the hype around him, and I get how excited Colts fans are for Anthony Richardson. But again, he's only played, like you said, Drake, he's only played 4 games in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's going to take his lumps. There's going to be games where he looks fantastic. There are going to be other games where it's like, man, this kid just, with whatever he tried to do, just nothing worked for him that day. And that's part of being a young quarterback in the NFL. Shoot, Patrick Mahomes has some of those days where he goes out there and throws 3 interceptions, and the Chiefs don't look like they normally do. So it's certainly bound to happen to Anthony Richardson. But again, you just got to take those lumps and expect that it's not going to be perfect, and don't overreact when it's not perfect either. So again, this is all about 2024, 2025. It's all about Anthony Richardson. But what I'm saying, he's going to have to take his lumps, and there's going to be some hard moments. As DSG Goodbar says, there's going to be a lot of wow moments and plenty of WTFs. There's going to be a lot of wow moments. You're going to see those highlight plays where Anthony Richardson's being draped all over, and he's still going to deliver the football down the field. There's going to be games where Anthony Richardson likely runs for 2 or 3 touchdowns, and he could have a 5-touchdown game, and it could be 2 through the air and 3 on the ground. You could realistically see that. So I also don't think that you're going to be able to predict game to game how Anthony Richardson's going to do. We can sit here and we'll be able to analyze and kind of, we can guess the type of game plan that Shane Steichen is going to put Anthony Richardson in. But again, it's all going to be predicated on how that defense is playing Anthony Richardson each week. So I think probably in the beginning of the season, you are going to see more quarterback run to try to get him just into the flow of things. And then as he gets settled in, kind of how it was last year, seemed like as the weeks went along, they put more on Anthony Richardson's plate each time, and especially in the passing game, and it started opening things up. So that way, by the end of this season, I think everything is going to be at Anthony Richardson's disposal. So do I expect a Pro Bowl year out of Anthony Richardson? No, I think that's putting the expectations unrealistically high. Mm-hmm. Would it shock me though if Anthony Richardson went out there and got a Pro Bowl season? I don't think so either, because I think Anthony Richardson is also capable of going out there and getting between rushing and passing over 30 touchdowns this season. So whatever happens, it's going to be electric. But I do think that by the end of 2024, I really don't think there's going to be any discussion or any wondering anymore. I fully believe that Anthony Richardson is going to go out there and prove that he is the franchise quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts, and they have figured out the most important position in football.
Yeah, and just when you think about, again, the coaching and how that was factored into this, okay, you really have to think about Steichen and Richardson as a head coach quarterback duo. Like, these guys are going at it. These guys are put together for the future of the Colts. So it's just all about learning. And like you said, I love how you mentioned, hey, it's going to be week to week. Every now and again, you're going to see, hey, a crappy game. Man, at the end of the day, talent matters so much. But I think more than that, it matters scheme. And how often have you seen it? Okay, in real live action on the gridiron. So if he goes out there and has a stellar game against an incredible defense because they can't figure out QB contain, but then he goes out there against like a bottom tier defense that has just the right scheme, just the right pass rush against him, and just figures out how to get into the lanes of passing and pick him off a few times, well, guess what? Richardson's going to have to figure that out, learn from that game. That's why it's so important to have a mentally strong QB, because you can learn from that, especially young. And then you can apply it the next time you go out there, throw a pick against the same coverage. You'll remember the mistakes you made last time, which, as we've seen, Andrew, we praised him for this last year. You didn't really see him make more mistakes over and over. He seemed to kind of fill those potholes until, of course, he got hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And just to kind of put a bow on this conversation, I fully expect Anthony Richardson to keep the Indianapolis Colts in the hunt for an AFC South title. And I think with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, the Colts are a huge threat to win their first division title since 2014.
Ooh.
And now shout out to my beautiful wife, Danielle, the beautiful mother of my child, Danielle, for her nightly super sticker. Really, really appreciate the support and everything that you do for not only myself, but Jackson as well. Appreciate the hell out of you as always. So Drake, let's move our attention to the backup quarterback, Joe Flacco. And this is interesting because, you know, when we talked about the backup quarterback position quite a bit this offseason, you know, who's going to replace Gardner Minshew? We talked about Tyrod Taylor. You know, we talked about Snoop Huntley. We talked about even Marcus Mariota. But we didn't really talk about Joe Flacco. Turns out Joe Flacco is the one who is replacing Gardner Minshew in this lineup. So when you think about that, you think just, you know, if worst case scenario, Anthony Richardson does go down again and Joe Flacco has to step in and play quite a bit. Really, it comes down to, you know, and this is, I think, the huge question. And I think we already know the Colts answer because the Colts signed him. But can Joe Flacco be a better backup quarterback for the Colts than what Gardner Minshew was last year? So Drake, what do you think?
I mean, it's harder. That's a harder question to answer than what some people think. Just because he's got a big arm, remember Matt Ryan, out of nowhere, man. I mean, he is old by quarterback standards. This man is nearing retirement, you know, and I think that he's going to probably keep going, honestly, till those wheels fall off. I think that if Joe Flacco can even be a little bit of what he was last year, absolutely, I think he can be better than Gardner Minshew. Minshew, he scored some rushing touchdowns, but if you look at his overall production, it just so happened he was close enough to the end zone that he didn't have to outrun anybody. Okay, so this is a system where you need to push the ball downfield. You got to be able to stand tall in the pocket, deliver it downfield to really open up everything else underneath. And I think that that's what Joe Flacco can do. And I think even if he isn't the comeback player of the year form we saw, he still can make things happen because there's just that seriously deadly ground game that he could lean on. And there's multiple backs that you can use just to kind of diversify the attack. I think he could be successful, but it all depends on if he does or does not hit that cliff. Because look, he's 40 years old. I think it's probably coming soon, and it might come this year.
Yeah, so let's compare some statistics here, just for the sake of it, because I think Stats Matt, he's not in the chat. I think Stats Matt is at another softball game, so I'm gonna do my best Stats Matt impression here. So last season, Gardner Minshew, 13 starts for the Indianapolis Colts. He had 3,305 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So on average, about 194 yards per game. Joe Flacco with the Browns, 5 games, 1,616 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he averaged 323 yards per game. So about 130 yards per game more. And then Joe Flacco in 8 less starts than Gardner Minshew through 2 less touchdowns and 1 less interception. So, you know, Joe Flacco, there's a reason he won comeback player of the year last season. And I think, you know, when you're looking at Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew and their differences, Drake, the biggest difference is just the willingness to throw the deep ball. Yes, Joe Flacco is 39 years old, but he can still sling the pill, and he still has a very strong arm and isn't afraid to uncork that football deep on any defense. We saw it last year multiple times with the Cleveland Browns. Now, Gardner Minshew, that's just not his style. It's really never been his style. Sure, he'll take the occasional deep shot, but Gardner Minshew likes to get the ball out to his receivers. We said he liked to get it out quickly, but last year, as we saw, you know, a lot of times Gardner Minshew held it and then started started to panic when he couldn't find anybody open. So, but Minshew just has the reluctancy to push the football down the field. He's just risk averse in that way. Not Joe Flacco. Like I said, in those 5 games, Joe Flacco had 8 interceptions, and in the 13 starts, 17 games total for Gardner Minshew, he had 9 interceptions. So you're definitely getting a gunslinger mentality with Joe Flacco, excuse me, that you do not get with Gardner Minshew. But when you think about it, the quarterback run game, while it happens sometimes with Gardner Minshew, it was pretty non-existent once Anthony Richardson went down. So you're not really losing much there with Joe Flacco, but you're still keeping that ability to push the ball deep. And I think what Joe Flacco showed us last year is he still has it. Now, you do make a good point. He is 39 years old. Father Time is undefeated, and he could go off a cliff, just like that. And we could see everything drop drastically. But from what we've seen throughout the offseason so far, Joe Flacco still has it. So in terms of, can he be a better backup quarterback? I think he's in the same stratosphere in that, Joe Flacco can definitely win some games. And like he showed last year with the Browns, he can lead a team to the playoffs if the pieces are around him. And I think the Colts have a good enough roster around Joe Flacco that can certainly be the case.
Yeah, and something that was really interesting on our own Jake Arthur on Locked On, he was actually at camp, and something funny he said is during the drills with second team, Flacco was not even slightly interested in checkdowns. All he cared about was just targeting for points. This is a dude who will just sling it. And when you got a backup quarterback, I'd take the gunslinger over the conservative guy, honestly, just because you need to be aggressive now because he's a backup for a reason. So I think Flacco's definitely got a place on this team as long as he can stay ahead of Father Time. He can not only be a great mentor for Anthony Richardson, former Super Bowl MVP, but he can also continue to be a very stable backup just in case they need to turn to QB2.
And this is an interesting question from our good buddy Noah Jaber here at Horseshoe Huddle, the one and only. Noah says, Shane Steichen will never be the guy to say it out loud, but do you think the switch from Minshew to a guy like Flacco means he was frustrated with how the offense was run last season? I do think he felt, in my opinion, he probably felt hamstrung by Gardner Minshew, not only from his reluctancy to throw the football deep, but it just seemed like there was a lot of times, and this is what we thought Gardner Minshew was going to be coming in. He was going to be a guy that got the ball out quickly to his receivers and didn't panic under pressure. We saw that last year, Drake. That was not the case. When it seemed like if Minshew got rattled early, it was going to be a bad game. We even talked about it. Which Gardner Minshew are you going to get? The Gardner Minshew that takes care of the football and stays calm in the pocket? Or are you going to get that Gardner Minshew that gets rattled easily and then starts throwing inaccurate footballs, turning the ball over, not finding the open man? So I definitely think that the Colts wanted a guy that fit Anthony Richardson's strengths a little more in terms of the passing game, and someone that wasn't going to be easily rattled, someone that could still uncork the football down the field and stay aggressive with the offense.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, it's a 1-year deal, and so if he works out, great, and if he does a great job of mentoring Anthony Richardson, maybe you keep a guy like Flacco. I mean, he was far cheaper than Gardner Minshew, so you just hope at the end of the day he just stays in a mentor role. Old man Flacco is as much respect as I have for him. I would really like to see him play only during the preseason and just hold that clipboard all year long, right onto the playoffs.
Now, last season, Drake, we talked about, who was going to start early in the season. Was it going to be Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson? That's no longer a conversation. We know Anthony Richardson is going to start from the jump, and this is his team. But quarterback 3, definitely a battle, because currently the Colts have 5 quarterbacks on their roster, and each one brings a little different type of game, to this team. And now with the third emergency third quarterback rule, I mean, having that third quarterback, most teams carry a third quarterback. So let's look at this battle. But it's going to happen. It's going to be the most intriguing battle, one of the most intriguing battles for roster nerds like us. But between Sam Ehlinger Keaton Slovis and Jason Bean. Those are the three guys vying for that quarterback 3 spot. And honestly, Drake, you're getting something, like I said, you're getting something different with each one of these guys. Sam Ehlinger, been with the Colts. This is his 4th season with the Colts now. You basically know what you're going to get. He's not flashy. He has some starting experience, but he knows what the offense is. Very smart, but the ceiling is super low with Sam Ehlinger. Keaton Slovis, back when he was a freshman at USC, this guy was projected to be a potential first round pick in this year's draft, way back when he was a freshman, or in when he was ready to declare. But things happened at USC. He ends up transferring to Pitt and then transfers again. I think he transferred to, I almost want to say, BYU even after Pitt, and it seems like every single season in college his stats and his play kind of decreased. Then you look at Jason Bean, Jason Bean, who's listed as a quarterback wide receiver. He plays both quarterback and wide receiver, easily the most electric out of the three. But he's probably the most raw out of the three, probably not as accurate as those guys. However, if you're looking for a pure athlete, Jason Bean is tops by a mile over these three guys. So each one of them brings something interesting to the table. But what do you think? What do you think of these three guys? And do you think there's anybody, which one of these guys probably has the edge right now?
I think it all depends on, at that point, if you're going to your third quarterback, I mean, that's not good, but you really want to have, I think, somebody that you trust, you understand better than everybody, and that gives you probably the highest floor. Okay, not the highest ceiling, because it's third string. It just gets more and more like hectic with the range of, could they be absolutely tossing interceptions left and right, or could they just have a 400-yard game? It gets larger. I think that when you look at a guy like Bean, he's definitely got the least chance, just because he's the rawest, and when you go, or the most raw, and when you go to that quarterback 3, you don't want raw per se, especially if you can help it. I think you want more of stability. But Keaton Slovis, so he's also athletic in his own right, by no means the runner that Bean is. But he is interesting because if the Colts are looking for a bigger, maybe more athletic guy that can just chuck the ball downfield, Slovis has a lot of appeal, but I just think they're going with Ehlinger, man, because they understand him. They've seen him. He's got starting experience, albeit during one of the most pathetic years the Colts have had in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
He still has that starting experience, and against Bill Belichick nonetheless. So the guy has been there, done that. He's played a lot of football, more than both those guys. Okay. So I don't think it's even close. I think it's going to be Sam Ehlinger, just because if you're going to QB3, you need somebody you trust, and who better than like a guy that's been with your team for 4 years.
Right. And I do think that it's going to take a monster, training camp and preseason for Slovis or Bean to replace Ehlinger, just because, and you guys got to remember too, the training camp preseason, that's Sam Ehlinger's time to shine. How many times the past few seasons have we seen Sam Ehlinger go out there and absolutely dominate the third stringers in the preseason? You're thinking, hey, this kid might have something. And then obviously when we saw him actually get his chance to start, I mean, granted,
deer in headlights, dude.
The Colts offense was in shambles at that point, let's be honest. But at the same time, Sam Ehlinger certainly didn't do anything to elevate that offense either. But Drake, I think you're right in that if the Colts had to go to their emergency third quarterback, you do need to have somebody that you can trust, just to try to keep the ship afloat as much as possible. And I don't think that's Keaton Slovis. I don't think that's Jason Bean. I think it's going to be Sam Ehlinger. So these guys are certainly in camp to push Sam Ehlinger for that quarterback 3 spot. And I do think it's going to be fun to watch Slovis and Bean play in the preseason, but at the end of the day, I do think that it ends up being Sam Ehlinger getting that quarterback 3 spot and that emergency QB spot.
Yeah, and one thing real quick, I actually like what DSG Goodbar said down there. That Slovis's game is a lot like Flacco's. The only thing is, Slovis moves quicker. I mean, his relative athletic score is a 9.34. I mean, he runs a 4.55 dash, good 20-yard split, good 10-yard split, good broad jump. I mean, there's appeal there. And if he goes out there and he can put all those tools together, he's more athletically gifted than Sam Ellinger is. Okay. He can throw the ball farther than Sam Ellinger can. And that fits whose system better? Shane Steichen's than a guy who is safe or a guy who tries to take it easy. So if Slovis can go out there, he's going to have to do a lot. But if he goes out there and absolutely blows the freaking socks off of the coaching staff, makes them even think for a second not to bring back Ellinger, then I think that's who they go with, just because I think that Bean is just too raw.
You know, if you see Slovis light up the Denver Broncos, who they're the Colts' first preseason game, if Slovis goes out there and lights up the Broncos, I think this conversation gets much more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
So it's definitely a battle that we're going to be watching throughout training camp and the preseason. But let's move it on to our new our new segment when doing these positional breakdowns. And again, shout out to Matthew Sandberg for giving us this idea of really comparing the Colts, whichever position we're talking about. So today, comparing the Colts quarterback room with the rest of the quarterback rooms in the AFC South, and then we'll try to rank who's got the top. That we'll try to rank from top to bottom, I guess I should say, all of the quarterback rooms in the AFC South. So let's take a look at the graphic here about these quarterbacks, so that way we could take a look and see who the Colts are going up against. So when you look at the AFC South, obviously, I put Sam Ellinger in there just because as of right now, he's the presumed quarterback 3. Then you go to the Texans. Obviously, it's CJ Stroud, the reigning AFC South champions, with Davis Mills, and then they brought in Case Keenum this offseason. So I would assume that Davis Mills and Case Keenum will fight for the backup spot. As of right now, Davis Mills has the upper hand. Trevor Lawrence, who just got his 5-year, $275 million extension from the Jacksonville Jaguars, the undisputed franchise quarterback down in Duval. The Jaguars bring Mac Jones on board. Trevor Lawrence's 2021 NFL draft classmate, who was also taken in the first round. Now he's backing up Trevor Lawrence. And then CJ Beathard there as the QB3. Then you go on to Tennessee. Will Levis, who definitely started to come on towards the end of the season, got his shot. Definitely an up and down rookie season. They get Mason Rudolph to back up Will Levis from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then Malik Willis, who some people thought was potentially the future franchise quarterback for the Titans, now buried third on the depth chart. So Drake, when you look at these, when you look at each one of the other teams in the AFC South, and you look at their quarterback rooms, really what stands out to you?
I love the Texans quarterback room, actually, because Case Keenum actually has, he's been to an NFC conference championship game with the Vikings, dude. I mean, the guy has played probably farther outside of Flacco than anybody else in this, on this graphic, which, by the way, shout out to Andrew also for making this fantastic job.
Hey, Canva is a wonderful website. Wonderful website. Shout out to Canva.
There you go. But I think that it's a good room. I also think there's a chance Davis Mills might be the third stringer, just because I think Case Keenum has that veteran edge. Trevor Lawrence, man, say what you want about him. He's absolutely diced up Indianapolis. Definitely did last year. Made Gardner Minshew look like a fool. Mm-hmm. Mac Jones, again, say what you want about him. That team last year stunk for the Patriots. They were so freaking bad. Any quarterback would have struggled with that team. So I think that you're getting arguably probably one of the better backups in the NFL, as long as Jones just doesn't keep falling apart. CJ Beathard also has gotten it done every now and again. But the Will Levis one, so Mason Rudolph got to the playoffs last season. I don't know about Malik Willis. It's just he's such an unknown. He's barely seen the field. They didn't really let him go too far before pulling him right back. So I think they brought Rudolph in for a reason, though, and I think it's to push Willis to see if he's even going to get QB2. But I do think that outside of Sam Ellinger, not saying you can't play, I think Keenum's a better QB3. I think Beathard's a better QB3. And I don't know about Willis, but I do think that the Colts have a very competitive QB room just because they have the comeback player of the year right there.
Yeah, I do too. I think, obviously, yeah, Joe Flacco, when you look at the backup quarterbacks here, Joe Flacco is easily better
Easily.
than
Yeah.
any of these backup
Oh yeah.
quarterbacks. So the Colts have the best QB2, and then when you're looking at QB3, you're probably leading towards the Texans because Davis Mills has started for a season, Case Keenum has plenty of starts. So from top to bottom, I think the Texans probably have the best quarterback room.
Yeah.
And if you look at CJ Stroud and what he did as a rookie, if he continues to build on that, then I think you're talking about CJ Stroud being a top, close to a top 5 quarterback in the NFL if he continues to build on his rookie season already. That wouldn't be a stretch to say.
No.
Trevor Lawrence, when healthy, I think we forget about this too, that the Jaguars were leading the AFC South and had a like, a stranglehold on the AFC South before Trevor Lawrence got hurt last year. And then once Trevor Lawrence did get hurt, that's when the Jaguars started to tumble. And Trevor Lawrence never really looked himself after suffering that injury. So the Jaguars are definitely a tougher team than I think people realize just because of how they finished the season. And Trevor Lawrence, I think, is still a very good quarterback with sky high potential. Obviously, Anthony Richardson. We've talked about him ad nauseum. We've talked about what he could potentially do, but again, he's still very young in his NFL career, and he's going to have to work through some things throughout his rookie season. But it's also not a stretch to say he could be in the conversation with Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud right up there neck and neck with him when the season's over. I fully believe Anthony Richardson has the potential to have that type of season. And then Will Levis, I think, is the biggest wild card here because when Will Levis is on his game, Will Levis can dice up a defense. We saw him do that last season. However, he's got some Carson Wentz in him, and I don't. I'm not saying that he is Carson Wentz by any means, but he's got some hero ball in him. Sometimes he gets that tunnel vision where he's like, I got to go make a play, and only I'm going to make this play, and he ends up panicking and getting himself into trouble. And if he can try to take some of that out of his game, I think he would be much better off for it. But that's the big question. Will he be able to? So, Drake, when you look at this and you look at each team, give me your rankings. Who do you think from top to bottom? Let's just go through 1, 2, 3, 4, the quarterback rooms in the AFC South.
I think I mean, man, it's actually way harder now that you put the starters in. It's probably still CJ. It's probably still the Texans. Then it's close with the Jaguars because I do think CJ Beathard. I mean, he's actually got some very sneaky mobility. But he's kind of like Sam Ehlinger, weirdly enough. So I think that you got to give it to Flacco over Jones. Yeah, I think it's Texans, Colts, Jags, and Titans just because you don't know about Levis yet. The ceiling, I do think that there's a ceiling there, especially with Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears in the backfield. And then you got Brian Callahan, who, of course, Andrew, we were okay with him being the Colts head coach at one point. So Mason Rudolph, a couple times he showed some pretty good heart last year, but he's not a good quarterback, people. He just isn't. Will Levis should easily deter him. And Malik Willis, the Titans have not felt like he is even worth a starting role or even a QB2 role right now. So there's not enough on the guy for me to say anything. So it goes Texans, Colts, Jags, Titans.
I'm very, very close to that. I think the Texans, have the best quarterback room in the AFC South.
Oh,
what CJ Stroud was able to do as a rookie, if he continues to build on that. And then when you have Case Keenum and Davis Mills, both a lot of starting experience, both have won games in the NFL. Yeah, I think the Texans have the top spot. Then I'm going to go 2A and 2B, and I'm going to give the Jaguars 2A just because I think when you're talking about quarterbacks, it's different from other positions because you don't have, like, we're not talking about wide receivers where the Colts would have Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Alec Pierce or Adonai Mitchell on the field at the same time. There's only one of these guys that's on the field at the same time or at one time. And I've got to give, because Trevor Lawrence I have a tremendous amount of respect for Trevor Lawrence and his ability. I think that that trumps kind of having, Joe Flacco as the superior backup to Mac Jones by quite a margin, in my opinion. And you still don't know what you have with Anthony Richardson fully yet. So because of that reason, I'm going to give the Jaguars 2A. I'm going to give the Colts 2B. And if Anthony Richardson goes out there and proves what we think he can do this season, then the Colts jump right up into that 2 spot solidly, in my opinion. But I'm going to go for now, Jaguars 2A, Colts 2B, and then I think the Titans are a distant fourth, because Will Levis, even with the time, much more time than Anthony Richardson last year, I think there's more question marks around Will Levis than there are Anthony Richardson. And for quarterback 2, doesn't even compare. For quarterback 3, Sam Ellinger at least has shown what he's capable of. Malik Willis, he still hasn't really done much, if anything, in the NFL. So my rankings go Texans 1, Jaguars 2A, Colts 2B, and Titans at number 4. But who knows, if there's a lot of all of them young quarterbacks, all of them still learning and getting better, this could be a very, very competitive and tough division when it comes to quarterbacks here as soon as the end of this season, Drake, especially when you talk about those 3 in Stroud, Lawrence, and Richardson.
Yeah, and it's turning into a division where, look at what the Titans did adding Ridley. I know he's another veteran, but now you have 2 solid veteran receivers. And then the way that the Texans just did all these offseason moves, the way the Colts kept the pillars, and the way that, the Jaguars just retained their franchise quarterback for the future. And you bring in Gabe Davis as well. So this is no longer the laughing stock. You have Doug Peterson, Brian Callahan, D'Amico Ryans, and Shane Steichen all now fighting for a division championship. Good luck, man. It's going to become a war zone, especially if Will Levis can even hit a little bit of his ceiling and Richardson can, continue to hit those strides. It could be a really difficult division, and whoever the hell comes out of that's going to be tough to take out in the playoffs.
Exactly. I think you're spot on there. So that's our quarterback talk. Let's get over to the latest Colts news and rumors, Drake. And this is actually really, it's good news to talk about to start. Jim Irsay made his first public appearance this week since his health scares this offseason, was able to post a video on Twitter talking about the 40th season for the Colts in Indianapolis, talked about how he was excited to induct Dwight Freeney into the Hall of Fame, and Jim Irsay, he looked like his old self, looked like he's definitely lost a little bit of weight. But, when you go through those challenging health issues, I think, a lot of us can expect and have seen that happen to some people. But he sounded like he had more energy. He looked like the Jim Irsay of old, the enthusiasm in his voice and in his eyes. And it was just good to see, Jim Irsay back to being able to at least speak publicly and show himself to Colts Nation. I think a lot of Colts fans were happy to see that. And hey, Jim Irsay also, I think today, actually, it was either today or yesterday, just celebrated his birthday as well. So happy birthday to Mr. Irsay.
Yeah, and it's just really good to see him, talking back to the fans. You're talking about a guy who's really arguably the most unique owner, and all because of Jim Irsay's collection. I got to freaking see something I never thought I'd see. I got to see Anthony Richardson help Chris Angel do a freaking magic trick, people, in Lucas Oil while seeing Hart and John Mellencamp live. So Jim Irsay rocks, and Colts fans should be very happy that he's back. And hey, NFL fans, however you feel about the guy, he's good for the league. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he is, and I think we all want to see Irsay well and back there cheering on his Colts. The final thing that we saw here or that was announced this week, and it's kind of crazy where we've gotten to this point where there's an announcement for the training camp announcement. So the Colts did announce this week that they will be announcing their training camp schedule on June 26th. So not next week, but the end of this month, the Colts will be announcing the training camp schedule for Grand Park and Westfield. what days that practice will be happening, the special themes of those practices, the times of those practices. You can expect to have a couple of night practices thrown in there, especially when the Colts do end up uh, having those joint practices with the Arizona Cardinals. That'll be Colts fans' opportunity to see Marvin Harrison Jr. up close and personal. So if you're able to make it out to that, I encourage you to do so. But it is kind of funny, Drake, that we're now at the point where, you know, announcements for training camp schedules are now news in the NFL.
You know, and it's just gotten to the point where, I mean, it's awesome. It just shows how big the NFL has become. It's reached outside of even the US now. So, but man, sometimes you're like, come on, like, especially with the schedule release, no other professional sport, usually the NBA, MLB, they're like, all right, people, here you go. And the NFL's like, schedule release, and you already knew the opponents, you just didn't know what order.
Exactly. It's kind of crazy. So now we're talking about training camp schedules, but hey, you know, Drake and I are going to be out there in Westfield. We hope to see a lot of you guys out there in Westfield as well. So it's really going to be a fun time out there. There's a lot to be excited about as well. You know, for the Indianapolis Colts, seeing Anthony Richardson back out onto the field with Jonathan Taylor actually practicing this season as well. So lot to be excited about. Drake, those days in Westfield, they do get pretty hot, you know. Last year we got kind of lucky, but we saw the you know the indoor practices. But hey, hopefully we'll be able to see some action outdoors this season. So that's our show, guys. Really appreciate it. And I told you we have a special surprise since it is Father's Day. We do have a special guest here, and so we're gonna bring little Jackson onto the screen here, wearing his Colts jersey. Hopefully he doesn't cry. He's been kind of fussy today. Yep, as he goes. But he's got his little Colts shirt on. So this is Jackson Moore, everybody. Hopefully no one's gonna chastise me for how I'm holding my son here. But this is the future first overall picker of the Indianapolis Colts here in 22 seasons. So yeah, and Drake, you've got someone you want to introduce as well too.
Hi, this is and well, Jackson, I feel you. That's what I was doing at the that's what I was doing when Tyler Goodson dropped the pass. That's all you need to know. That's right. This is Madeline. She's really not 100% sure what she's looking at. So she's just kind of vibing. But this is how I was staring at the TV Christmas Eve when the Colts were getting destroyed by the Falcons, wasn't it, honey? She didn't know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What a beautiful little daughter you got there, Drake. And yeah, this is Drake and I's first Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to everyone out there. Madeline, a little Colts fan, Jackson, a little Colts fan. We're all so excited for the Colts season. And shout out to Aubrey and Danielle, our fantastic partners, for everything they do for our children.
Shout out to the partners.
Yes, shout out to the partners. Honestly, you know, the world there's my beautiful wife Danielle on the screen. You can see her super stickers. Jackson Coleman. Well, I thought he was going to call
looks like a tiny Andrew Moore.
It's time for him to get his last feeding and go to bed for the evening. But guys, thank you so much. Happy Father's Day to everyone out there. We really appreciate everybody's support. Shout out to Truett and my beautiful wife for the super stickers, and everyone else who joined us live tonight. If you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night. And then for our special audio only episodes, catch us on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts. We're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. Drake, I know you've got pieces out there on horseshoehuddle.com that you want to tell the people about. Tell them what to go check out.
Yeah, so I recently did a position breakdown just on how the Colts tight end position is just so incredibly diverse and competitive. And then there was a real interesting breakdown from Pro Football Focus. I think her name, I can't remember her name, but she broke down like different quadrants of like quarterback and wide receiver relations and did a deep dive, and you will actually be surprised where the Colts fall. It's not very good. So go give those a gander, and if you have any thoughts, let us know.
Yeah, definitely go check those out. I've got a piece out on Horseshoe Huddle about Leatu Latu and what his NFL experience has been like over these 6 weeks, and also how he plans to attack his game this summer on the way to his first training camp. And guys, next week, Rookie Files is back. We're starting Rookie Files up next week again, where I go through every single Colts draft pick of the past draft and really just tell their life story from when they were in Pee Wee football all the way up. Love to tell these guys' stories so you can feel more connected to them before training camp begins. So go check that out, as well as everything else on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWallsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Monday night to talk about the running back position for the Indianapolis Colts and Jonathan Taylor back in a horseshoe. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about that. So everyone, enjoy your weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the fantastic dads out there, and we'll see you right back here on Monday night to talk more Colts football with all of you.